Very welcome, all of you, venerables, excellencies, and friends from all over the world to the seminar, Buddhist Spiritual Care in Different Cultural Contexts. My name is Trudy Fredriksson. I'm the chair of the Swedish Buddhist Community and coordinator of Buddhist Spiritual Care. First, a few practical questions. As we cannot occupy your time too long, I'm sorry there will be no public space for asking questions or chatting. Instead, the panel will pose questions and discuss the topic of tonight. If you have questions, you can send them by mail via the contact pages of our organizations, and we will respond to you. Before we start, we used to have a few minutes of silent meditation in order to focus on being here and now and arouse our awakened motivation of love and compassion for this seminar to benefit all sentient beings. Thank you very much. The host of tonight are the Royal Anti-Embassy of Stockholm, the European Buddhist Union, and the Swedish Buddhist Community. So we start with short introductions by their representatives. The Swedish Buddhist Community is a registered faith community with 26 member organizations from all major Buddhist traditions based in Sweden, with activities in at least 50 places in the country. Our community is also a member of the European Buddhist Union. The year 2013, the Swedish Agency for Support to Faith Communities has authorized us to provide Buddhist spiritual care in the hospitals and cooperate with healthcare institutions and interfaith congregations. We are also cooperating with different authorities on crisis management and spiritual care in prisons. Our two spiritual care coordinators have established a network of monks, nuns, other ordained representatives and lay volunteers from all main Buddhist traditions throughout the whole country. But we are especially serving many persons with Asian and other backgrounds that don't have a connection with the established Buddhist communities. We probably could extend our services much more if we all together, besides of our Buddhist practice, also could develop the mutual cultural understanding and the needs of both Asian and Western people and our surrounding society. Buddhism is sometimes also called the inner path. We can learn to understand ourselves and our surroundings, the interconnectedness and transforming capacity of all life. As we talk about spiritual care, we are pointing towards our wish to relieve the discomfort and underlying existential pain or different experience kind of pains in different situations of our lives. Our caring activities have a direct roots in our innate capacity of wisdom and compassion. Tonight, the Venerable Ajahn Kalyano and the panel will deepen our understanding of how we can transcend our boundaries and develop on our path of peace and love, and thereby help relieve the difficulties and pains of all who need. Now I invite following speaker, Her Excellency Kanchana Pattarachok, Ambassador of the Royal Thai Embassy, Stockholm.
Thank you very much, Kun Trudy, and Namaskaranท่านอาจารย์กัลยาโนนะคะ and good evening everyone. Also good morning to those in Australia. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Kun Trudy and the Swedish Buddhist Community, as well as the European Buddhist Union, for co-hosting this event together with the Thai Embassy in Sweden. As Ambassador of Thailand to Sweden, I look to share to Sweden something that Thailand is good at. And I feel that Thailand is a Buddhist country. Over 90% of the Thai population are Buddhist. And here in Sweden, we also have a very large Thai community. About 60,000 Thais are residing in Sweden at the moment. And we have about 30 temples and Buddhist centers all around the country. And mostly these temples and centers serve the Thai community. So we feel that there's much more that the Thai temples and the centers can offer to the Swedish society. And we feel that Swedish people are very much interested in meditation, but mostly for relieving the work stress, but not to understand the teaching of the Buddha or how to end suffering. So tonight we are honored to have Ajahn Kalyano, who has so kindly agreed to give a talk tonight. So I'm most touched by his graciousness and his kindness to come at 4:30 in the morning in Australia time. But thank you very much for coming. So I hope that everyone will benefit from his guidance, and also not only the caregivers, but those who need care and people like us who simply want to be happy. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kalyano. The following speaker is Venerable Dario Dorsin Girolami, of the chair of the European Buddhist Chaplaincy Network.
Good evening or good morning, depends where you are. I bring you greetings from the EBU, European Buddhist Union. The European Buddhist Union is an international umbrella association of Buddhist organizations and national Buddhist unions in Europe. We envision a fellowship of European Buddhists bringing Buddhist ideas and principles into European society. In 2008, the EBU obtained the official participatory status with the Conference of International Non-Governmental Organization of the Council of Europe. The EBU was founded in 1975 as an umbrella association for existing European Buddhist organization, but the influence of Buddhism and Europe upon each other goes back much further than the 19th or 20th centuries. Our mission is to facilitate international exchange and promote spiritual friendship amongst European Buddhists, to support social action and ideas motivated by Buddhist values, and to amplify the voice of Buddhism in Europe and worldwide. And as for chaplaincy, Buddhist chaplaincy is an emerging field in the West and in Europe in particular. As we all know, the seeds of Buddhist chaplaincy begin with the Buddha himself. And Buddhist chaplaincy is Dharma-based compassionate service to both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. The aim of the EBU chaplaincy network is to support the new field of Buddhist chaplaincy in Europe and highlight the application of Buddhist principles in socially engaged action by supporting Buddhists already serving or working in healthcare, hospitals, hospices, palliative care, and prisons, and in the armed forces, fostering connections and sharing of knowledge, best practices, and experience within a community of Buddhist chaplains, creating training opportunities for those engaged or wishing to engage in Buddhist chaplaincy, creating professional standards for service and developing partnerships with professional accreditation bodies, and addressing religious, spiritual, and pastoral needs within Buddhist communities to encourage greater community cohesion and social integration. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to the talk of Ajahn Kalyano. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Dario. We have actually some time, but I also know that Venerable Ajahn Kalyano used to start with a meditation. I welcome you very much, Venerable Ajahn Kalyano. It's a great honor to meet you from my part for the first time, but I hope it will not be the last time. And we are looking forward for your Dharma talk. The wisdom and compassion of the Buddha transcends cultural boundaries. Venerable Ajahn is the abbot of the Bodhivana Monastery in Australia, if I am not wrong. So is it okay for you, Venerable Ajahn, to start? And maybe some people think you will start at 7 o'clock or at the exact time, but it's up to you whether you would like to start with the meditation or how you would like to arrange your talk and meditation. Please, I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Maybe, yes, good idea that we begin with a 5 or 10 minutes quiet meditation. So if everybody can hear me, I assume you can hear me because you're nodding your head. I will guide you through that. So when we begin meditation, the important thing is to find a comfortable posture to sit in. So you can be on a chair or on the floor like me, it doesn't matter. And then try and sit in a way that you can hold your posture for the next 10 minutes without moving. So the Buddha always encouraged us to sit up straight with a straight back because that gives us energy. So to hold the head up, sit up as straight as we can, but at the same time, not to tense our body so that we're actually causing ourselves pain as we sit. So the first part of meditation is actually just bringing attention to your sitting posture as you are right now, how you feel. So that might mean how the air in the room you're in feels, whether it's cool, like here in Australia, it's 5 a.m. so the air is cool. Sweden, I'm not sure, maybe it's cool also because it's winter there, but maybe you're in a warm air, heated building. But just feel what the air feels like on your body. And then bring your attention, close your eyes and bring your attention into your body. And just note how you're feeling internally. And whether you feel a bit tired, or you feel quite neutral, or you may feel inspired and energized at this time. But just note that without judging anything. Just note how you feel. So part of meditation is just getting to know yourself physically and mentally, paying attention to yourself in the present moment, right here, right now. And you can also just gently send your attention down from the tip of your head. You notice your face, and if you have any physical tension, muscle tension in your face, your jaw, just quietly relax that if you can. Notice your neck and shoulders. These are areas in our body where we often build up tension, especially when we sit looking at a computer screen for a long time. We can unconsciously become quite tense and even have pain without realizing it. So if you notice anything, just relax the muscles. Relax the muscles in your arms, down to your hands. Just put your hands in your lap, maybe one on the other. Any tension in your stomach, relax. Your hips, your legs, and last but not least, your toes. Ask yourself the question, how do my toes feel right now? Your toes are just as important as any other part of your body. So sometimes it's good to check in with your toes. Can you feel them? And then do the same thing in reverse. Just bring your attention slowly up from your feet to your knees, to your hips, your stomach, your chest, back up to your face and your head. So at this time, you're allowing yourself to let go of everything else, all your other business and concerns, including this very seminar that we're participating in. Just let go of your physical body, let go of the future, your plans, your thoughts about the future. Let go of the past, what you may be remembering. Now bring all your attention to the feeling of the in-breath and the out-breath at the tip of your nostrils. If you can't feel that, because it's a very subtle feeling, just take a few deep breaths right now. Breathe in. Breathe out. As you're breathing in, notice the feeling of the air coming in at the tip of your nostrils. It's probably cooler than the air within your body. So notice that coolness, the air brushing past your nostrils into your body and down to fill the lungs. Notice how your lungs fill with the in-breath. The abdomen rises. Your abdomen falls with the out-breath. The lungs deflate. And the air goes out again at the tip of your nostrils. So now let your breath just go at its normal pace. You don't have to force it to be long or short. Just notice these sensations of the breath coming in, the breath going out. And you can center your attention in just one place. You no longer have to follow the breath into your lungs and down. Just keep your attention at the tip of your nostrils. Allow the breath to come in and out quite naturally. And every time your mind strays away from that one place, at the tip of your nostrils, and you start thinking about something else, or if you open your eyes and you start looking at something, bring your attention back to the feeling of the breath. Close your eyes, let go of that thought, that distraction. And this is training yourself in exactly the way that the Buddha did 2,500 years ago. It was by watching his breath that all the enlightened knowledge, wisdom, compassion of the Buddha arose. Bringing up this quality we call mindfulness, that ability of the mind to pay attention in the present moment. And at this moment, the object of our attention is the feeling of the in-breath and the out-breath. So calming your mind, letting go of distraction, but maintaining alertness. And being willing to train yourself to bring the attention back to the breath when your attention strays away to other things. So we'll come to the end of this short meditation now. And open your eyes. Again, just notice how you're feeling in the body. We'll end the meditation there. So again, blessings to everybody who's joined the seminar today. I've been invited by Trudy and Kun Kanchana and all the other organizers to speak to you a little bit on the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. So it's an honor for me on the other side of the world, as it were, in Australia. But maybe just that simple fact already is showing you how the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha transcends so many boundaries. And we're all human beings in different parts of the world. We've all got different backgrounds, different ages, different languages. I'm in awe of everybody who's Swedish who can speak such good English. I speak no Swedish at all, so I'm embarrassed to say I don't have that skill. But we're all from different backgrounds, different genders, race, cultural backgrounds, and so on. And yet we all have an interest to be here to talk about and discuss the Buddhist teachings. And you can see, particularly over the last 50 years, say, the Buddhist teachings have spread all over the world. When I first encountered Buddhism, I was about 16 years old, living in London, the UK. And I wasn't brought up in a Buddhist family. I was brought up in a Christian family. Went to a school that was a Christian school. And yet I personally was drawn to the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha, first of all through books, just reading books and being attracted to the deep, profound wisdom of the Buddha. Sometimes they compare the Buddha to a doctor, but they call him a spiritual doctor. And he's a spiritual doctor with a remedy for every kind of human problem and suffering. And that was my conclusion the more I studied the Buddhist teachings. Every doubt I've had in my mind has been answered in one way or another by the Buddha, either just through the teachings he gave when he was alive, but also through the practices and the ways of practice that he left us as a kind of an inheritance for the world that I've been fortunate enough to encounter and make central to my life. I've never been disappointed by the wisdom of the Buddha or the compassion of the Buddha, and everything he said and taught over the years has been proven to me personally, and then I think to many, many other people, which is why we have this event today. And that continues to take place. As I said, we've experienced the growth or the spread of the Buddhist teachings around the world over particularly the last 50 years, and now with the internet, global travel, and so on. So we have Buddhist centers, temples, monasteries, teachers, students all over the world. And of course, in one sense, there are the, might say, the Buddhist cultural attachments, probably is the correct word to use, that we all have, particularly, coming from different Asian cultures where Buddhism originated, originally India, but then in East Asia, South Asia. As Buddhism has spread around the world, it has brought the different cultural attachments with it, perhaps. Today we have Tibetan monks, we have Thai-style Theravada monks, And there are different kinds of Buddhist monks and nuns around the world practicing. And each tradition may have its different way of chanting and dressing and talking about the Dhamma. But actually the very heart of Buddhism hasn't changed, and it's common throughout all of these traditions. And that's one interesting thing in the non-Buddhist countries, like say in Europe, USA, Australia, where people are coming to Buddhism from a fresh place, with looking at it with new eyes. You know, sometimes that has a certain value in that we can see through to the heart of the Buddha's teachings, not so bound up with the cultural paraphernalia and the attachment to the sort of cultural presentation of Buddhism. Not that that's wrong or bad, simply we don't have it. We don't have that baggage with us. When I encountered Buddhism, I didn't know anything about chanting or, you know, the terminology of Buddhism, the different ways it's presented, the ceremonies, the rituals, Buddha statues, all the things that people are often confused by or find difficult to accept coming from a non-Buddhist background. I was the same. I didn't have any preconceived notions about Buddhism. I just read what the Buddha taught and was inspired by it and wanted to know more and practice more. And really, I think that's how it was in the time of the Buddha as well. If you think about it, when the Buddha was alive, there wasn't yet anything called Buddhism. There were what we call religious seekers, people who were interested to find spiritual contentment, happiness, inner happiness, answers to the basic problems of human beings that we all face everywhere. We all have to deal with the fact that having been born in the world, we're getting older every day. As we know, we face sickness, a possibility of sickness, injury every day. And one day we've got to die. And these are common experiences for every single person in this world. And this is what was one of the attractions that I had for the Buddhist teachings, in that, you know, what the Buddha was talking about is just basic, simple truths of life that affect us all. You know, why do I feel stressed, suffering? Sometimes why do I get angry? Why do I despair, feel worried about things, afraid of things? Why do I get frustrated in life? As well as why do I have to deal with physical pain and suffering? You know, I think everybody will have these different thoughts and questions come up in their life. And for me, discovering the Buddhist teachings, I found that he had answers for them, ways to deal with the basic problems facing human beings, how to live together peacefully, cooperate, and live more harmoniously and help each other, how to do things well in the world, how to find some sense of meaning in life and find some happiness. These were some of the immediate attractions for the Buddhist teachings for me. My own interest in Buddhism led me to travel 10,000 kilometers to Thailand looking for a meditation teacher. And I was lucky. I had heard about Ajahn Kalyano, who became my teacher, who was considered to be a very wise, compassionate teacher. And, you know, that drew me like a magnet. I was drawn to him and his monastery and his community of monks and nuns practicing in northeast Thailand. So when I was about 20, I traveled to northeast Thailand to go and stay with Ajahn Kalyano and his community. And if you've ever been to Thailand, I know many people in Sweden go to Thailand for holidays, but, you know, when you go to Thailand, most people go to the tourist spots, to the beaches, to the mountains of the north, to the glamorous or interesting places. In those days, very few people went to northeast Thailand. Very few people went to Ubon Ratchathani, which is where Ajahn Kalyano lived. You know, it was off the tourist trail. It's right in the corner between Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. You know, And in those days, there was still fighting in those countries. The communist wars weren't quite ended yet. It wasn't a place you would go normally, and yet I was drawn there. You know, nobody forced me to go. I just went because I was interested to practice Buddhism, a living tradition, a living monastic tradition. I was drawn to the monk's life in particular. So I went to stay with Ajahn Chah, and I started at, he had set up what we call the International Forest Monastery. So I went to stay there in the early 1980s. If you look at northeast Thailand, or that area, Ubon, Ratchathani, from say Google Earth, you look down, you're looking down on a place that has the highest concentration of Buddhist temples and monks in the world, somebody told me. There may be other places that have a lot of Buddhist Sangha, of course, but Ubon Ratchathani in particular has lots of monasteries, lots of monks. So we have a joke, we say it's the main export of that part of Thailand. They grow a lot of rice as well, and I'm sure they produce other things as well, but they actually produce a lot of monks. And just now, Trudy was saying, or Kanchana was saying, in Sweden, there's now 30, I think, Buddhist temples, particularly Thai temples. And I'm sure there'll be a few monks from Ubon province there, because they've spread all over the world. Myself becoming a monk there was like a second birth for me. We say we're born, you know, from our mother's womb, and then we're born again as a monk. It's like our second birth, second life. So many monks have been born and created, or you could say manufactured, in Ubon and sent out around the world now. And that is one of Thailand's great offerings to the world, is helping in the spread of the Buddhist teachings for the benefit of everyone. Of course, there are many other Buddhist cultures and traditions that have also spread out, such as the Tibetan Buddhists, Sri Lanka, many other ethnic Buddhist groups have spread around the world. But Ubon is special in that sense, high concentration of Buddhists with great faith, and even though it's traditionally quite poor economy, poor place, harsh conditions, it's produced lots of very wise and compassionate monks and nuns for the benefit of us all. And I personally, I'm living proof of that. I benefited from meeting with my teacher, Ajahn Chah, and living and practicing there, to the point whereas eventually I've been invited to live in Australia again, because people are interested to learn and practice about Buddhism. They find it helpful. The word Ubon, the name of the city there, means lotus. And sometimes they compare the human mind to like a lotus. And our mind is like a lotus. If you have a pond and you see the lotus in the pond, you know, it starts off down in the pond, in the water. And as the sun comes out and warms up the water, the lotus plant starts to grow and move up through the pond to the surface. And if the sun keeps going, that lotus flower will start to bloom. It will open up. And they compare this to the effects of the Buddha's words and teachings on the human mind. You know, we all have this inner potential for realizing peace, happiness, for developing wisdom and compassion, for overcoming our problems and helping others as well. But we need the right stimulus, and the right stimulus is the sun in the case of the lotus. In the case of the human heart or the human mind, it's the words of wisdom and compassion from our teachers, our good friends, our spiritual friends. That's the beginning of our practice, and that's what nourishes us and gets our own inner lotus growing up through the murky, muddy waters of the pond. We can grow lotuses here, even in the mountains of southern Australia, which are quite cold. You probably assume Australia is just a hot country, but here it's quite cold. and but you can still grow lotus in the ponds. When the sun comes out, it still warms the water enough for the lotuses to grow up. But they're coming up through very muddy waters. You know, the waters here are quite muddy. We get a lot of rain, but it can, with the sun's rays and time and the right conditions, you know, you can still get a beautiful blooming lotus. So I've always found that a very useful reminder of my own and the other people's inner potential for developing wisdom, compassion, peace, and happiness. We all have it within us. It's just we have to nurture these qualities. And that was one reason why I became a Buddhist monk, is just because I found that the cultural environment, because Buddhist monasticism is one form of culture in the world, I found that very suitable for nurturing my own spiritual qualities. To be honest, I didn't trust myself as a layperson before I was a monk to do the job well on my own. I thought I needed help. So that's one thing that drew me to training as a Buddhist monk and drew me to Ajahn Chah, a very good teacher. You know, if you want to train in something, you might as well seek out a good teacher, and he was a very good teacher. But we need some help to nurture our inner lotus or the inner goodness within us. So it is important to find teachers, guides, and what we call good friends, spiritual friends who can provide a good example and support us, especially in the beginning of our practice or our journey to find inner peace. Sometimes Ajahn Chah used to say, as you're developing your heart in this world, in your life, you need to develop the qualities of the similar qualities to your mother and father. Like when we're physically born, we're born to the womb, through the womb of our mother, and our parents, they bring us up when we're young, when we're totally defenseless, helpless. They'll give everything for us, to us, and for us, do everything for us. They'll nurture us, feed us, care for us in every possible way, until hopefully we grow up and we're old enough and mature enough and strong enough and skillful enough to look after ourselves. That's probably the goal of parents, isn't it? To bring their children into the world so that they can then go off and look after themselves. But as we come to look at our own mind, we also need to have those same qualities, the qualities of our inner mother and father, you might say. Ajahn Chah used to say that, as you train yourself to understand the truth, to understand where peace comes from, to understand the true nature of things, from developing ourselves from the inside out, you might say, we need to develop the inner mother and father, which is just these different aspects of the mind, which are going to help us to grow as a human being. Sometimes we need to be firm with ourselves because we often get caught into bad habits, or we become lazy and stubborn in our life, or we do things that are very harmful for ourselves or others. So sometimes we have to be quite firm with ourselves and very direct and tell ourselves what to do and what we shouldn't do. Other times we need to be quite gentle with ourselves. So, like a mother, if you're suffering, you have pain, or you have stress, or you're miserable, sometimes you also need to give yourself support. You need to soothe yourself, calm yourself down sometimes. Sometimes you need to give yourself words of encouragement to keep going through difficulty and so on. So I found that very pertinent in my own life and practice, just developing these inner voices that are giving the right encouragement or the right words of admonition, or even criticism, self-criticism, when done from a place of well-being, well-wishing, compassion, kindness. These have been very important, and it's something you learn from the practice of meditation and just self-investigation and developing mindfulness. You have to learn to talk to yourself properly as a human being. You know, we learn in the world a lot about how to talk to other people and communicate, and we learn all kinds of knowledge and skills, and we go on and use that in life to earn a living and, you know, do things in the world, and that's all good. The one thing that the Buddha pointed out is that whatever you do in the world, if you haven't got your inner world, the world of your heart, your mind sorted out, then there'll still be problems in your life. You know? So we have to learn how to talk to ourselves, or develop this inner voice, the correct inner voice that is going to help nurture the qualities that will bring us more peace, more happiness, more wisdom. So sometimes we need to be very firm with ourselves, pick ourselves up, push ourselves a bit. Sometimes we need to tell ourselves to calm down. And these are the kind of skills you learn in meditation. You know, the technical terms you might have learned are meditation on the practice of developing calm, or samatha, or serenity meditation. And the other is development of insight, vipassana, or clear seeing of the way things are, which helps us to develop wisdom. And Buddhism is based around this training, the training in learning to calm the heart, balance our emotions, bring up a sense of well-being and inner peace, just as we were trying earlier with the breath meditation. But then to use that calm that we develop through meditation to investigate the truth, to understand things better. These are the two sides, or the two aspects of meditation, calm and then insight. And if we're going to do anything to help the world or improve the world, care for other people, understand other people better, go across cultural boundaries, this is something that I think is really essential, and it's certainly something the Buddha emphasized. We have to learn how to develop inner calm and inner understanding in order to understand others. But it's quite natural. The more you put effort into learning about your own mind and how to free it up from stress, suffering, bring it to a place of peace and understanding, you can't really avoid learning about other people and realizing that other people are much the same as yourself. As I was saying earlier, we all have to experience birth, aging, sickness, and death. This is just the basic facts of human life. And with that, we often have a lot of suffering, don't we? Physical suffering, but then also the mental suffering, the worries, the anxieties, the fears, the disappointments, and so on. And the more you're learning and understanding about your own experience, particularly through developing self-reflection, investigation, examination of your own body and mind, your own human experience, the more you realize other people are much the same. And the Thais have a phrase, putting your heart into the heart of others. And that's very much one of the results of the practice of Buddhist meditation and opening up your heart to understand the truth of life. You know, as you become more aware of yourself, you can't help but become a little bit more sensitive and aware of other people. As you become more aware of yourself, becoming more mindful and learning what leads to what. If you are feeling stressed or miserable or unhappy, where's that come from? Or if you're feeling very peaceful and calm, where's that come from? Learning about this, you start to notice other people are in much the same situation as ourselves. Whether you are of the same gender or the same belief system, you have the same interests, whether you're of different age groups, doesn't matter. You know, all of us as human beings have a mind, and we're sensitive. We feel pleasure, we feel pain. We all want to be peaceful and happy. We all have that, but we all have different ways of going about finding more peace, more happiness. And what attracted me to the Buddhist teachings was it's such a clear guideline of how to live in this world so that you can develop the qualities that help you to understand yourself and then help and understand other people and help them. Before I became a monk, I was traveling in Africa, And I actually met a couple of Swedish people who I traveled with for a while. And we got on very well together, even though we were from very different backgrounds, different interests. But one thing I discovered while traveling in Africa before I was a monk is that in order to help other people, we have to learn to help ourselves. I went to Africa just to travel, just to look, broaden my experience of life. And obviously encountered a lot of different experiences, met some very good people, kind people, but also saw a lot of poverty and even conflict, physical armed conflict. But one thing, one conclusion I drew from traveling in Africa was that I had a wish to help, give something back in some way to the people there, because I realized coming from the UK, from London, city life, I had a lot of, you might say, privileged background. I had lots of things that the average person in Africa didn't have. I had lots of comforts, convenience, wealth, and so on, and they didn't have. So I thought maybe I should be doing something to help. But then thinking more deeply, I thought, well, what can I do to help other people? You know, I thought maybe I could do some volunteering or join some organization that help to educate, provide education or something, you know, the usual sort of things you might think of, how you can help other people in a place like Africa. But then I was looking at myself and I was thinking, yeah, but I don't really know how to help myself yet. I still get angry and frustrated, and I still have confusion, and I still have many doubts about life and what is right and what is wrong. So here's me, perhaps a little conceited, thinking I'm going to go and help poor people, but then stopping and realizing I haven't even helped myself yet. So rather than joining an organization or volunteering or something like that, I thought I really need to go off and learn more about myself as a human being in order to really sort out my own problems, my own stresses and sufferings. Then I may be in a better position to help others. So the Buddhist teachings are kind of on this, based on this idea or this principle, is that, of course, it's a great thing to help others. And the more we understand our own limitations and problems, we realize other people have similar problems and have to encounter similar things. But if we haven't learned to understand our own mind yet, we're not that peaceful yet, there's only so much we can do for other people or understanding other people. So Buddhist teachings kind of emphasize this. This is why Buddhist meditation and developing kindness and compassion in different ways, you know, it starts with yourself first, working outwards towards other people. Because you see so often in the world when we're idealistic, and I've certainly had my fair share of idealism, you go out to help other people. If you haven't gained your own understanding how to look after your own mind in different situations, well, you often can get burnt out or end up even going out to help people, but end up teaching them the wrong thing or not really helping them up at all. My first insight into that was when I was about 17. I was working in a shop in London and I saw a lot of homeless people on the streets, and so I'd feel sorry for them and think, oh, I should help them. I'm earning money, they don't have any money. So sometimes I would give them money. But 3 doors down from the shop I was working in was what we called an off license. In Australia, they call it a bottle shop, a place that sells alcohol. And I noticed the people I'd give money to, with my good heart, kind heart, they'd go and take their money and buy alcohol. I was telling them to buy food and they'd just go and buy beer or spirits or whatever. So after a while, I stopped doing that and realized, maybe there's a better way to help people. You know, I have to think about this more. Idealism is a bit like that. You know, often we have an idea to help others, do something good in the world, but often you have to stop and think about it, don't you? Just giving money to someone, it may be appropriate in some situations, but in others, maybe it's making their situation worse. So if you give money to an alcoholic, they'll probably just go and drink more alcohol and it'll bring them closer to their death, won't it? So that was my first insight into helping yourself, helping others. I realized I really have to think about life more and understand myself better in order to help others. So Buddhism comes from this kind of basic background, learning to help yourself so that you can help others. And you do it together. It's not that you just help yourself without ever helping others until you reach a certain point, a point of enlightenment, and off you go to help others. You do it hand in hand at the same time. But it's essential that you're also learning for yourself as you help others. So just as we're talking today, my teacher Ajahn Kalyano used to say, when you're talking about Buddhism, you're sharing or you're teaching others, you're also teaching yourself. Don't forget that. It's not like, I know everything and I'm telling you what is what. I'm also learning in this very moment, in this very situation. And as we interact with other people in the world, that's what we have to do, isn't it? We have to learn for ourselves as we're learning about other people. So keeping an open mind, an open heart, and learning as we go seems to be the right way. And the Buddhist teachings are full of that encouragement to learn from experience, to understand things better. And the Buddhist teachings were not just a set of doctrines that the Buddha said, you have to believe these to be Buddhist. If you don't believe, you're not a follower of the Buddha, you're not one of us. It wasn't presented in that way. The way the Buddha taught was to test out the teachings that the Buddha gave. The Buddha's teachings are like a roadmap, teaching people to live their lives in a way, or to learn and grow in a way that will bring them peace and happiness and bring peace and happiness to others. But they weren't just based on beliefs, they were based on principles and guidelines that you then have to take away and put to the test for yourself. So as Buddhism has spread around the world, we can see it's gone literally to every continent, every corner of the world nowadays, which I would say is that, that's the blessing for the world. But it hasn't come about through some master plan, people wanting to convert others to Buddhism and go into all these places where they never had Buddhist teachings before and change everyone to become Buddhist. It's a much more organic thing. The Buddhist teachings seem to have a lot of wisdom in them, and that naturally draws people to those teachings, and they want to learn from them and then put them into practice in their life. But nobody's making you do that. There's no sense of compulsion, or nobody is trying to forcefully convert anyone. It's just naturally that people find they make sense. That's certainly my experience. And that is why they are attractive to people in the world. So we have to learn how to, say, as on the part of teachers, Buddhist teachers, we have to learn how to make that the wisdom, the compassion of the Buddha available to the world. So there are the cultural trappings and limitations of Buddhism, but we also have to see how we can adapt them to different countries, different cultures as Buddhist teaching spread around the world. My teacher, Ajahn Kalyano, he was brought up in northeast Thailand, this quite poor area. He got a very simple education just to the age of about 12, and then he left school, as so many kids do in that part of the world, because there's no money or time for further education. And yet he became a very wise Buddhist teacher with hundreds of thousands, probably millions of students all over the world. He didn't plan that. He didn't have some master plan to take over the world using Buddhist teachings. He was just a very humble man, but with very special qualities, particularly a great determination to learn for himself what the Buddha taught and come to an understanding for himself. And then with great compassion to share his understanding with others. And he just began in a very simple jungle setting in northeast Thailand, and was practicing for himself very sincerely, very diligently, came to find great peace in his heart. And when you say peace in your heart, in Buddhist terms, that means finding a way to remove the causes for suffering from his heart. And he managed to overcome or abandon the three roots of suffering that human beings get caught into all the time. It's greed, anger, and delusion. That's the kind of the Buddhist summary of why human beings suffer, because we follow our greed, we follow our anger, we follow delusion, therefore we suffer. He managed to abandon those three qualities from his heart. This is what we call the enlightenment experience. And then he taught that, how to do that. He taught the Buddhist path to others, first of all monks, and then nuns, and then the lay people, first of all just the local villagers who would come and practice, support the monks and nuns, and then practice with them. But gradually, because of the quality of his wisdom and because of the boundless nature of his compassion, he started to spread those teachings simply by people coming to see him, find him, seek him out, just like myself, because of the quality of his teachings, because of the sense of peace. When you meet a good teacher, their words make sense, there's a sense of peace, and there's a great acceptance. And part of the practice of compassion is acceptance of whoever it is you're engaging with. These are the sort of qualities that were emanating from Ajahn Chah and drew people from all around Thailand and now all around the world. And even though he died many years ago, his teachings are still living on through his talks, his books, and then his students, who, like myself and many others. There are a number of Swedish monks in our community around the world, as well as from many other nations. These teachings have gone around the world now and are still available, fortunately, in book form and in talks, and then students who have lived with Ajahn Chah and gone off and established monasteries and places of practice around the world. They're still here today for our benefit. But the interesting thing is Ajahn Chah didn't kind of plan that. It's not like a commercial organization. It's not like, say, IKEA, who may sit down, their CEO and the board sit down and say, where are we going to build our next store, and where are we going to send IKEA products around the world in its commercial sense. Buddhism is not the same. It just spreads quite naturally because people have an interest to find peace, happiness, to grow, to learn, they want to experience more well-being, and that draws them to the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. And it works. People put these teachings into practice and it works. So the proof is in the practice, really, isn't it? It's not simply believing in the Buddha. You may believe in the beginning, it is based maybe on belief, faith. You have some belief that what the Buddha taught seems to be true, some faith that it's a good thing. But what's really I think led to the spread of the Buddhist teachings and helped so many people is that they've actually practiced them and found that they really work. Maybe I'll finish just giving an example. Like when I went to Thailand quite quickly, my teacher became very ill, and I spent some of the first years of my life as a monk just caring for my teacher. And I learned a lot of lessons from that, just putting into practice the Buddhist teachings I had received from him and from other teachers, putting it into practice, caring for him, and seeing the important thing is, learning to appreciate what is good in the world, good in the teacher, good in the things you've received in the world. I gave something back by trying to help my teacher at the end of his life. And I notice in Buddhism, you see that all the time. People are constantly appreciating the good in themselves, the good in others, and then giving something back. And there was one female doctor, a Thai doctor I knew. We used to joke, her name was Kalyano. My name as a monk is Kalyano, which means one who is good. It's not that I'm good, it's just a name I was given to aspire to or inspire me to practice. Her name was Kalyano, so it's the female version of Kalyano. So I knew this doctor, and she, unfortunately, later in life, she got cancer, if I remember rightly, stomach cancer. It was maybe 30 years ago. And she was a very supportive Buddhist of our monastery of Ajahn Chah and the community of monks. And she would come to the monastery to learn meditation, listen to the Dhamma, to help. She obviously had her own work as a doctor, but she would give up her free time to practice Buddhism and do meditation and so on. But then she got stomach cancer and so was terminally ill. So I visited her many times during her illness. And just like our teacher, she took on, her task, she said, was to practice Buddhism through her illness, to apply what the Buddha taught through her illness. So every day she would practice meditation to calm her mind, bring up mindfulness, calm her mind from the anxiety, steady the mind through the painful feelings that she had to experience, and she had a lot of pain, and deal with all that trauma and all the disappointments of, she wasn't that old. She's, if I remember, she's probably in her 60s when she got cancer. But there, you'd have to deal with a lot of disappointment getting terminal cancer. You've got to face the end of your life, separating from everybody you love and like. All of that she was determined to face using the Buddhist teachings. So I'd visit her and she said, well, Ajahn Chah could meditate and practice through his illness until he died. I'm going to do the same. If only out of respect and devotion to the teacher, I'm going to put his teachings into practice and follow his example. And she did that very well. And eventually she had to move into hospital because she needed daily care, chemotherapy, and so on. And she was very sick, very weak, and becoming very skinny because basically she was starving to death, unfortunately. But at the same time, she was very inspiring. And we would laugh. I'd go and visit her and talk about meditation and different aspects of Buddhist practice with her, and just give her words of encouragement. And her friends would go and visit her daily, and she had a lot of friends, colleagues, ex-patients, and so on. But they all said one thing. They said when they went to see her, they would be the ones who felt supported by her. They felt it was an honor to go and visit this doctor who was meditating through her terminal cancer. They felt they were gaining something. She would be very peaceful. She didn't have a lot of strength to speak much. She would listen, say a few words, and just be a very peaceful presence sitting on her hospital bed. All the friends who were full of energy and vitality, because they're still healthy, would go and visit, but they'd all go away feeling they had got something from that interaction. They were the ones learning. They were the ones blessed to see someone dealing with their illness so well. And she said everything she got from the Buddhist teachings, from Ajahn Chah and from the words of the Buddha. And she said, as she was getting closer to death, she really benefited from the Buddhist teachings because they helped her to find inner peace, even though physically her body was falling apart, literally, and she was dying a quite unpleasant death physically. She said mentally she's still happy inside because she understands that if you can see this body as impermanent, which it is, as we get older every day, one day it will die. And if you can understand that what is impermanent, you ultimately, in the deeper sense, you don't own. You don't own your body. You can't command it not to get old, not to get sick, not to die. She would say, if you can see that, then you can find inner peace. And that, you might say, is the heart of Buddhist practice, is learning to see that you don't own this body. You're related to this body, you have it for a while, and then you give it back to the world. And that is what we call wisdom, when you can see the impermanent nature of this physical body, the fact that it's something you don't own, you don't control, you just borrow from the world and then give back to the world. Then you can find peace. And where does that peace arise? It arises in your own mind, your own heart, coming from seeing the truth. That brings your mind to an acceptance of truth, and you find the result of that is you find inner calm, tranquility, peace. So the highest peace in Buddha's explanation is it comes from wisdom, seeing the way things are. And the result of that is great sensitivity and compassion towards others. So this doctor would sit on her bed just telling people how she was practicing through her last weeks and days. And everybody would go away, all the visitors, her friends would go away feeling fortunate to have met her and been with her that day. So in the end, the doctor who was dying became the blessing for the healthy. She didn't plan that. That wasn't her intention, I don't think. She was just being honest and saying, this is how I'm dealing with my illness. And she was doing it very well. She died what we call a beautiful death. But as she did that, her compassion was such that she was able to share her experience and inspire many other people. And over again through the years, I've met monks, nuns, men and women who have put these Buddhist teachings into practice in similar ways and shown that they really do help us to deal with the basic suffering of human existence, old age, sickness and death, the ups and downs of life. You know, they give us a means, a way or a method to deal with that very well. So I think I've come to the end of my time now for this talk. So thank you for listening, and I wish you all well. And I think we have some further events now to participate in. But anyway, for the moment, I wish you all well.
Thank you very much, Venerable Ajahn Kalyano, for your inspiring talk and overview of Buddhism and the Buddhist practice and the benefits for each and everyone in the world. Now I would like to invite Professor B. Scherer, Chair of the Buddhist Studies of the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, to introduce and to chair the panel, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for inviting me. As I said, I'm B. Scherer. I'm director of the Buddhist Seminary in the Netherlands, and I have the honor to chair this little discussion with a corona of wonderful guests that we have here today. My idea of chairing this panel is to invite short statements of reactions, and I'm sure praise and appraisals for this wonderful Dharma talk from all our esteemed panelists, and invite then Ajahn, if he's willing, to shortly respond to any points that we will raise. And after that, we will go into a discussion about what this might mean for spiritual care. So I want to start by inviting Professor Valerie de Marinis, who is a senior expert in public mental health, who is with us today, to maybe give 2-3 minutes of her thoughts to this wonderful talk. Valerie.
Thank you very, very much. I just want to say this was an experience. It wasn't a talk only, and that's quite unique in my world. I also it was magical watching the light come, and I was listening and also watching the darkness go to light, and realizing that what I thought was there was not. It was other things. And to me, that is a kind of metaphor, if I can come up with one for this very stimulating experience. Thank you very much. I was struck by so many things, but just maybe to point 2 or 3, because for a person that works I'm a psychologist, I work in public mental health, I work with hospital institutions in Sweden and Norway. And one of the things that struck me is I do a lot in multicultural groups, And I was thinking of that wonderful metaphor of the lotus, where it's the same flower, but it develops a bit differently depending on the context. And so it made me think of the remarks also you were saying about culture. It's we can't let it control us. When it becomes the trappings, that becomes problematic. So it's a constant way to manage the need for culture and context, but not let it trap us. And coming back to perspective taking. I also thought it was just brilliant, as someone works quite often in psychiatry with patients that have different perspectives, the rethinking about our inner voices. We don't get much training in how to listen to people who are ill, physically or mentally, to give them a chance to understand the voices have something to say. And that was very inspiring on all levels, individual, organizational, what we do in our training to understand the existential health. And I think I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor de Marinis. Can I invite Dr. Ajahn Kalyano, who is the Chief Buddhist Chaplain at the UK, Her Majesty's Armed Forces, also a colleague of mine at the Buddhist Seminary in the Netherlands, to give a short reaction to this experience.
Thank you so much, Professor B and Venerable Ajahn Kalyano. What a wonderful honor to be able to listen to you. Throughout your speech, I was actually taken back to 2,600 years when the Buddha had the conversation with his disciple Ananda, proposing that the Kalyana Metta, the spiritual friendship, is, he was proposing that it is half of the spiritual life. And the Buddha actually reprimanded Ananda and said, why do you say half, Ananda? The entire life is about this spiritual friendship. And I think the blossoming of the lotus through this an amazing spiritual friendship really symbolizes the entire Buddhist teaching. And you have really summarized in a very simple words through your experience the incredible teachings and also how it actually has persisted over through time without trust funds, without any major planning. So I mean, overall, I mean, looking after about 6,000 serving Buddhists in the British Armed Forces, I could actually very much relate to what you were saying about the universal nature of the malady, the problem, and the Buddhist remedy to it is also amazingly natural, organic, rather than sort of very prescribed. So overall, and I would say what you articulated, in my view, is what I always term as three important aspects to Buddhist spiritual caregiving: the clarity of mind, goodness of heart, and listening ear. And I think through your speech, you have very nicely actually demonstrated that clarity of mind and the goodness of heart the wisdom and compassion, which actually enables us to develop a listening ear and feel the empathy and feel the suffering of others. Thank you so much. Really, your life story speaks much more than the words. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sunil. And can I invite Dario Doshin, who was already introduced, but maybe it's nice to say that Dario is not just some European bureaucrat. Now, in the contrary, he is a spiritual chaplain, a caregiver in one of the most difficult situations next to armed forces. It's in the prison, and I think he started the prison service in Italy. So we come again from a different cultural background, and we're really interested to hear your perspective, Dario.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ajahn Kalyano, for your wonderful, wonderful talk. Thank you. And thank you for your presence that spoke to me deeply, your attitude and your presence. And even though I am a Zen priest, I started my practice in the Thai Forest Sangha tradition with Ajahn Sumedho and then Ajahn Tanavaro before he disrobed. And so listening to your talk was coming back home. If I might say, the Thai Forest Sangha was my first love. So that was very, very inspiring and touching. In listening to the talk, I heard many times overcoming our problems by practicing. Well, what if we don't? I'm in Rome. I deal with Christianity every day, and in Catholicism we have this incredible example of saints, but those examples are a kind of unreachable, out of reach. It's beautiful examples, but what if I am not a saint? What if I will never be like that? So in hearing overcoming our problems, in my experience, I saw many people that have been practicing all their life and they didn't overcome their problems. A few days ago in Mahayana, we celebrated Buddha's enlightenment on the 8th of December. And I went back to the Pali Canon and looked at the relationship of the Buddha with Mara. And the relationship, as we know, doesn't stop with Buddha's enlightenment, but Mara keep on showing up through all Buddha's life until the last moment. When Buddha is dying, Mara shows up. So if we think of Mara as not only a demon, but as a symbol of our problems and of our human nature, if Buddha himself had to deal with Mara all his life, what do we mean by overcoming our problems? I belong to the tradition of Shuryu Suzuki Roshi, and during a retreat, Suzuki Roshi said to the people sitting, the problems that you are having now, then a long pause, and then he said, will remain forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dario Doshin, for bringing a Zen perspective here, typical, which is very good. So maybe it's nice that if I follow up with the Tibetan tradition, and which I am a teacher. As my previous colleague said, I was struck and honored by your presence, which I felt as a balm on this cold evening here in the Netherlands. We heard about the metaphor of the lotus from Valerie de Marinis, from Sunil, Dr. Sunil. We heard from about your presence from Venerable Dario. I heard much about empathy. empathy, that is so beautifully encapsulated in this Thai saying that you shared with us. Thank you for us, putting your heart into the heart of another, if I have understood it correctly. And this reminded me deeply of one of the most fundamental practice that I share with my students and that we share in our tradition, which is called giving and taking. Is part of the lojong, of the mind cultivation practice, where we exchange ourselves with another. So quite literally in our traditions, in the Mahayana tradition, and then when we can also do that in a tantric way. So I was very, very happy about to hear that and make this connection, and with this summarizing maybe these points that we have together. The importance of the presence. Dr. Sunil talked about the Buddha, the Kalyana Mitra, and how this is our entire life. That means being present. But what if the present is always under attack, as Venerable Darius told us, if the symbol of our attachment and our impermanence, death and desire, Mara, comes to us and confronts us? What is when the problem cannot be overcome? When we practice and in a Zen way, nothing happens. Maybe that's the practice. So maybe with these kind of questions coming back to you, Eric, may I invite you, Ajahn, to comment. Thank you very much. I think you have to unmute, Ajahn Kalyano. I think you are still muted. Thank you very much.
You hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
So thank you for the comments. Particularly going back to the fact that, you know, our problems seem to be never ending. Well, I would agree with that totally. Yes, they do. Whether it's just our own personal problems of our practice or the problems in the world, of course, it seems to be never ending. But we have to remember that the saints in Catholicism or the enlightened beings in Buddhism, they're the people who give us hope that there is an end to suffering, there is an end to the problems. Of course, they sometimes seem distant or up there or way ahead to the point where they're too far away for us to feel connected to them, perhaps. But of course, I'm fortunate. I went to Thailand and I lived there and met living saints, living enlightened beings such as Ajahn Chah. And the thing to remember is that they come from backgrounds just like us. They were people just like us. The main thing is that they didn't give up in their practice, and that's something Ajahn Chah used to say. You know, of course, he had problems. He had all his own attachments, confusions, greed, anger, worry, fear. And if you read his teachings, you'll see how he dealt with those problems. But the important thing is he brought his own personal suffering to an end, and then was very good at helping point other people in the right direction. But we have to do it for ourselves. You know, the Buddha, the saints, the enlightened teachers give us the example, they give us the inspiration, but then we have to take that in and follow. And as Ajahn Chah said, just don't give up. However difficult it is, don't give up. If you don't give up, you don't stop, then you're going to get somewhere. You're going to get something. How long it takes, we don't know. You know, some people seem to become wise and compassionate quickly. Some people take a little bit longer. We just have to accept that fact. But all the religious enlightened teachers of the world show us that there is hope. There is a way for human beings to improve themselves, to grow, to change for the better. Otherwise, it would be like we're being in a spiritual desert, wouldn't it? We'd have, if there was no Buddha, no saints, nobody, it would just like, then Mara has one, and we say, oh, you know, there's just no way out of all this conflicts and sufferings that human beings experience. But we're fortunate there are people who have found a way out, and they're kind enough, they've been compassionate enough to teach it and share it with others. So they give us hope. In Thailand, if you go to Buddhist temples, one of the most common mudras for the Buddha statues you see in all the temples is the Buddha sitting with his hand on his knee, one hand in his lap, one hand on his knee. And they call that mudra the subduing Mara. So it's a Buddha statue based on the night of the Buddha's enlightenment, where he's sitting under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya in India, and he made his determination, his solemn resolve. He said, I'm not going to get up until I've abandoned greed, anger, and delusion from my heart, until I've completely penetrated suffering and its cause and completely liberated my mind from suffering. So he's sitting there under the tree, and then, as you've read or seen in movies or whatever, there's the personification of Mara, all the hordes of Mara, all the enemies come to try and scare the Buddha and tell him that he can't sit there and he's not going to get enlightened, and they do everything they can to stop him. Or you can look at that psychologically, internally, that's all our own attachments, delusions, greed, anger, fear, worry, all coming up to try and stop the Buddha, but he managed to go through it all. And he's sitting there with his hand on his knee and his fingers touching the ground. And the fingers touch the ground and say, may the earth be my witness that I'm not going to give up until I'm enlightened, and I'm not going to give in to the obstacles. I'm not going to give in to Mara. In the monastery I used to live in Thailand, we have a second explanation for that mudra. We say he's got his hand on his knee, stopping him from getting up, literally, physically holding him in place. Because if any of you have done a meditation retreat, you'll probably know there are times when you just want to get up and get out of there. That's our mind when it's beset by desires and worries and attachments and whatever it is. You just want to leave, don't you, physically? But the Buddha had his hand down and he kept himself there until he'd worked through it all, until he's subdued or calmed his own mind. So that's the teaching, isn't it? When we're facing problems, yeah, sure, it can seem endless and we can feel very depressed and fed up with it all, especially if you're in a particular situation like in prison or with severe illness or some other kind of terrible trauma or whatever. It can seem hopeless. But we get our faith, our inspiration from those who have practiced before us. And they've said, yeah, okay, however bad it is, there is still a way out. And you just have to keep practicing. Every mental state that we get caught into, depression, sadness, anger, ultimately these are not, we say, one of the gifts of the Buddha's wisdom to the world is to point out that these mental states are not self. They're impermanent, they're not self, that means they're not fixed. So even though we can be very miserable in our life for periods, it's not fixed. It doesn't have to be that way. There's no such thing in the Buddhist teaching, say, as an original sin. It's not like that we are born with sin, and destined to live with sin all the time. The Buddha is saying that actually our mind is neutral and there is a way out of suffering, and we're not destined to always be caught into problems and suffering, but we do have to be the one who works our way out of it. We are the ones who have to do that.
Thank you so much. I would like to shift gears and refocus our gathering of thought maybe to the context of spiritual care, Buddhist spiritual care. These wonderful teachings which we heard. How do we apply these in spiritual care? And I want to ask our expert on mental health, maybe. We talk a lot about the universal applicability of Buddhist teachings or of any sort of tradition. What, from your perspective, what are the universalia? What are the universal necessary qualities that somebody must bring to sit with the suffering and give care, give maybe spiritual care. You need to unmute. Thank you.
Well, yes, that's not an easy question. But I think as someone listening with, working in these areas of health on a daily basis, what seems very applicable about these the principles and values that I've heard is that it helps both, I would think, people who are suffering from different kinds of both physical and mental, and it's never separated. They're always together, even though the manifestations might be by the medical team more on one thing than another. But it helps. It appears, as I hear and have seen some of this in practice, to give people perspective. But perspective it's of the mind and the heart and the body all at once. So it's not, there's a cognitive part, there's an emotional part, but it's the presence and the whole experience. And this seems to me not only very useful if it's allowed to go through the person's system. So if it's dogmatic, it's going to be one more producer of sorrow and pain. But if there's an openness, as I'm hearing, and as I've seen at some points, then it's I can't think of anyone who is in pain that couldn't benefit from it. Also, the medical system in and of itself would probably, for the shaping of how we teach those in the medical professions, and I know that it's partly enforced or being taught, but it's usually piecemeal, and it's trying to get all the parts together of how systems of spiritual care work in medical care. So to me, it seems in principle and in practice quite applicable in any healthcare system that would be open to it.
Thank you. And what I hear you saying is maybe that we need to go a step further from cognitive and emotional disjunction. Instead of deep listening, actually need to start off thinking about what I would call deep interbeing with the pain, and that is what we in Amsterdam at the seminary are trying to teach our students, to be present, bear witness in this deep connection. But I'm wondering if I can come to Dr. Sunil, who brings this experience with him from not only the UK, but also from very specific cultural Sinhala Buddhist context. Thank you. So I'm wondering about this in universal approaches. Can they all anywhere be decontextualized, or don't we have to always cater very specifically to the needs of the Buddhist or the person just in front of us? What are your experience with that, Dr.
I'm not sure whether I understood you, V. Would you repeat that, please?
No, I'm just wondering if you are having somebody from a Sinhala Theravada Buddhist background for you, or you have a Nichiren Buddhist in front of you, isn't there a big difference how you are deep listening or even catering as a Buddhist spiritual caregiver?
Yes, I mean, last 16 years, I have been experiencing that a lot in the UK settings, because, we have over 840 different Buddhist centers here and 18 different Buddhist missions in London. And actually my own serving personnel are from very different, backgrounds. And they, one thing I actually keep emphasizing and use very strategically is the word Buddh, 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 Bodhi, and I know this word is so special and actually very rightly used by the Buddha himself when he went to Kapilavatthu. The King Suddhodana asked, why are you begging in my own city? And the Buddha said, well, this is my tradition. He said, no one in the Shakyan tradition begged food, and he said, that is your tradition, yeah, Your Honor, but my tradition is the tradition of the Buddhas. And so the word Buddh is so special. It is to know, to understand, to be aware, and to be awake. And I think it's not difficult for anyone to subscribe to that whole list of things, like, that anyone have actually an interest in the waking up and, getting to know and opening up. So in that way, what I do is, with my various different, Buddhists, I remind them of the unique, teaching of the Buddha, and they say it is just to actually wake ourselves up. And regardless of, as Ajahn said, your cultural differences, all of that are expressions of different things. But and I think, mainly what really combine us together is this whole idea of awakening, and actually nobody can resist that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm wondering if we can maybe bring some concrete examples, because I'm still thinking of a culture such as Japanese Soto Zen coming to America with Shunryu Suzuki, and then an Italian student going to San Francisco, learning Americanized Zen, bringing that back to Italy. Maybe Dario Doshin can tell us a little bit, how is the specific Italian context, not just Roman Catholicism, but also the very different emotive proclivities of Romance people, very different from Swedish people, from North German people. How does that? Is there anything that changes in your approach? Or how do you deal with that in the prison when all of a sudden you need to adapt? You need to unmute.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your question. Well, first, let me start with a joke. I always say that in Italy, we belong to the fourth vehicle. So after Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, we belong to Italiana. So yes, it's a very interesting place to practice. And Italy is equally distant from San Francisco and Japan. So when I decided to go to California instead to Japan to practice Soto Zen, I did that for several reasons. But one of the main reasons was that since Zen arrived in US more than 100 years ago, it had the time to adapt to Western culture. So what I found there was a traditional Soto Zen, but adapted to the Western culture with the language that was understandable by Western people. So my idea was going there where the work was already done, since my wish was to spread Soto Zen in Rome, but instead of doing myself the job, I could go there and where they already did that. But then when I came back to Rome, I realized that Italy and Rome is, again, yes, we are still in the West, of course, but it's not California. So I had to adapt more. And either in my Sangha or in prison, I mainly work with what I define recovering Catholics. So adults converted to Buddhism coming from Catholicism mainly and wounded by Catholicism, I'm sorry to say. So it's that with that wound that I have to deal with. And so this is quite challenging because recovering Catholics developed an allergy to religion, something that does not happen in California. So I have to deal with this allergy to religion. And so ceremonies can be a problem. Chanting can be a problem. Me showing up dressed in black can be a problem because my cassock my robe will remember them the Catholic cassock. So I have to pay attention to many, many things. So what is that Buddhism can offer to these people because they ask for something? So of course meditation is not offered, well, it is offered in Catholicism, but not in the way it's offered in Buddhism. So zazen, sitting meditation, but also insisting on the fact that in Buddhism there is no guilt, while in Catholicism is central. So when I, especially, can you imagine to work with inmates, telling them that there is no guilt, what is the effect on the psyche of a person, especially living in a penitentiary. The beginning of prison in Italy is connected with the church because they are penitents living in a penitentiary. But I think of the prison as an hospital, not of course, when you break your leg, you have to stop, and then you need a cast for your leg, and this is for healing. It's not a punishment. It's for your own good. So when I talk to them in this way, that they are there not because they are guilty, of course they broke the law, but that's another story. But if I work with them with the guilty feelings and I tell them that they are not sinners, but they just not in contact with their original nature, and then when I show them respect, this is something that changed them. I do my best to address to their Buddha nature, as we say in Mahayana. So I don't see a killer or a mass murderer or a mafia person, but Buddha, and I do my best. This is my practice, and so I do my best to address the Buddha nature in them, and they can feel that, and that changes the relationship.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example. Thank you. A wonderful example, actually, how we as Buddhist chaplains, as Buddhist spiritual caregivers, always have to adapt in these situations. I'm not sure Trudy could tell us things about Sweden, how different it is there from our background here in the Netherlands. We are in a society where people do not want to be patronized and want very low threshold offerings. So in the prisons, in the armed forces, and the hospitals, we are basically we are there in deep presence and deep bearing witness. And when prompted, we give some advice. And but it is in a sense we need to start quite low key. For me, from a Tibetan Buddhist background, I like to always give the most simple Buddhist teaching that I can first, because it's so important and so low key. Simply being a Buddhist, for me, is the promise to be kind. If we promise to be kind, kind to ourselves, kind to others. Then in the Mahayana, then this is what we would call the Bodhisattva moment. But this is in the Theravada tradition, what I see, Metta or Metta Bhavana is. So, and that, if we can give that to the people we give spiritual care, this idea of kindness, I think that is this is a low-key but very, very deep gift to start with. I think we are at the end of the allocated time. Thank you all so much for your wisdom in this panel. I want to give back the word to Trudy to see us out as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for a very interesting communication, I would say. As I also feel like communication, or you said being present or interbeing, that is for me the core in order to really realize something. But also, as you said, Professor B, I always feel we have to be on the footsteps, like on the floor. So the basic Buddhist foundations of, also you say, the Brahma Vihara, the kindness, the loving, the happiness, but also the equality or unparty, how you call this, not being taking parts. That is the base for the whole realization, I feel. If you understand the base, like the foundations of the building you are building should be there. You cannot start with a window, not with a roof especially. So what I understood is that every teaching of the Buddha, which I heard is about 84,000 different kind of teachings on, they say, 84,000 problems or sufferings, is like a symbolism that each of the teachings of the Buddha, depending on the person and the circumstances, is a way possible to relieve the suffering or the pain or the difficulties. But we have to take step by step. Like a Zen master said, we will develop like the grass is growing. You don't see it really, but I really feel that it is like that. It looks like we have all the problems still there. And of course, there are very many traces left in us before we will become completely enlightened. But as many of you also point out, like the difficulties are the ways, the antidotes are there for also relieving the pains and really becoming like a living Buddha example or Buddha the enlightened state. But we have to start, as Venerable Kalyano also said, by learning from each situation. If we are helping patients or meeting someone in the street or wherever we are, we can also learn from that situation. That person or the circumstances are our teachers. So that is for me a feeling of everything included. The Buddha's teaching, the inner path, is so vast and without boundaries that we have to renew ourselves as spiritual caregivers every day in order to really try to relieve, or we ourselves cannot really relieve, but be a kind of means of relieving, pacifying the person we are meeting, or the animals, or the small beings, wherever we can think, even maybe the invisible beings, the Buddhism or the Buddha also has taught about. We can include them in our whole existence. So it becomes, as Valerie say, also a living experience of life. It's nothing outside, nothing inside, but we really are a human being in experience. And maybe also the word communicating or interconnection with each other could help us to be better caregivers, but also to share our needs of development and learning of each other. So that's why I am really grateful for Bhikkhu Kalyano and all of you, Professor B, Professor Valerie, Dr. Sunil, Venerable Dario, and last but not least at all, Ambassador Kanchana, for also working together to make this possible, this very, very unique occasion of meeting together today. And I hope it will not be the last occasion, of course. And I would also like to recommend those participants, all participants, where they are, to continue also like following up and having gatherings or talks with each other, as we also now tomorrow in Sweden, the Spiritual Care group are going to meet and doing a following up, and still also improving like ourselves in the situation where we are in our country. But of course it is a mirror of the other countries, so we can help each other then also like exchange in other situations of the European Buddhist Union, of Asian kind of gathering for spiritual caregivers, or how you would name it, of course. But I am very, very grateful for this occasion. And maybe we could ask Bhikkhu Kalyano to have a few minutes of meditation leading by you to finish this wonderful time we had together.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, maybe we can finish with a meditation on the theme of metta, loving kindness. So, first of all, to ourselves, bring up a loving feeling, whatever works for you. Sometimes people say, imagine a feeling as if you're holding a baby or a puppy or a kitten. As you're sitting here, close your eyes and focus your mind on maybe on the center of your chest. Bring up the warmest, loving feeling that you can remember. If you're doing this meditation regularly, then it should be easy. If you're not familiar with it, you have to imagine that warm, loving feeling in the center of your chest. And now spreading out from the center of your chest to all parts of your body. So it's both a feeling, warm, loving feeling, and if it helps, you can recite something such as, may I be well, may I be free from anger, something like that. So if you have any particular physical pain in your body at this time, just send that feeling you're developing in your chest to that area where you have pain, in your leg or your back, your stomach, wherever. With the thought, may I accept this pain? May I be at peace with this pain. So bathing your whole body with the feeling of goodwill, love, accepting yourself at this time, however you feel, whatever you think. Wish yourself well and accepting yourself with peace, with love. I'll keep this brief because we don't have much time. So the second part of the meditation is to send this very same feeling out in all directions. So above, below, to the north, the south, the east, the west. May all beings in all realms be at peace, free from suffering, free from anger, free from pain. So literally in all directions, all around the world, at this time, accepting everybody, even those who have harmed you in the past. May they be at peace, may they be well. People you don't like, may they be peaceful and well. People you love, people you are neutral to. May all beings be at peace, be well. May all beings be free from any feelings of pain, stress, suffering. And try to really make this feeling clear to your mind at this time, in your own body and then out in all directions. So in Europe, you're getting to the end of your day, you're going to sleep soon. So may everybody in Europe rest easy. May they sleep well, be protected, be free from illness, pain, suffering. Here in Australia, the birds are singing. It's the beginning of the day. So may all beings be well and protected as they go about their business today in Australia. May the young be at peace, be well. May the old be at peace, be well. May all men be well, all women be well. So developing this thought and feeling of loving kindness in all directions to all beings without distinction. We'll bring it to an end there. And I wish you all well from Melbourne, Australia, and maybe we'll meet again at some point in the future. So may you all be safe, may you all be well and blessed by the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.
Thank you very much, Venerable Kalyano, and all of you. And for the Thai Embassy, for the European Union, and the Swedish Buddhist Community, our thanks to everyone to join us and giving us this very beautiful experience and learning. Have a very good night and or morning or midday where you are somewhere in the world. All the best to you.